At Barrel LLC, we have the privilege of representing victims and survivors that are oftentimes involved in catastrophic incidents that affect their lives.
If anyone looking for a personal and loving relationship with law, I would choose Bear Law.
At Bear Law, our goal is to turn victims into victors.
What's up, sports fans, and welcome back to a special edition of Talk Culotta, where we talk a lot of sports. Alongside me is Mike Triplett, ESPN Saints reporter, and the show starts right now. All right, Mike, so first and foremost, let's get into probably the most important topic of this week, and that was the media flag football game.
Oh man, I came in here being prepared to give you credit, but now I know you just want to showcase.
How'd you enjoy playing football?
You know, you made things harder on me. I think the back of the end zone prevented you from intercepting one pass intended for me. But yeah, it's a shame. You know, I had a few moments though. But...
What was that for you as far as media flag football? Was that number 5, 6? Been doing it for a while.
Maybe not even. Yeah, it's been scattered, and I missed the original back when it's very humble beginnings. The ugliest but most infamous moments came from the original, and I missed that. But yeah, I've probably been in 5 of those. But it's gotten more intense, you know. And new crops of rookies coming into the game every year.
You know, I told Nick Underhill the other day. He called me the first half MVP, but I think Garwin Gillen was the real MVP.
You can take Rookie of the Year.
All right, I'll take that. But no, on a more serious note, like Sunday was a near perfect day. I mean, besides the fact that Michael Thomas is dealing with a hamstring injury, having the fans out there, having the team out there, Tyrann Mathieu in the Dome, some of these new guys, Chris Olave and Trevor Penning being in the Dome for the first time as Saints. What's your take on kind of from Sunday having that practice and then these 3 closed practices to the media Monday through Wednesday, how this team's kind of preparing for the Chargers on Friday?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting. We still don't know how many starters are actually going to play in this game. And I mean, we have no history to go on because, well, first of all, it's Dennis Allen's first year as head coach, but also last year they didn't even have a third preseason game, so we don't know how they approached third preseason games. Last year they had a quarterback battle going on, so I think Jameis and Taysom probably played more than they would. And then you throw the wrench of Jameis missing the time he did with a foot injury. Do they need to make up for that? Do they want to be more cautious? It's really kind of a mystery whether they were always planning for this home game in front of the fans to be a dress rehearsal for the starters as well. So I'm really curious to see that. But we did see, even though Jameis didn't get to participate in the 11-on-11 against the Packers, they had some this week of practice. They had some actual 2-minute drills, work your way all the way down the field, which is different than just the scripts they usually go off of. And they're working with the clock. They're working with time pressure. They're improvising a little more. Jameis ran a few times. He slid yesterday, but he was asking him about that, going back to his baseball days. So, you know, I think this was a valuable week of practice as far as that goes. You know, he hinted that he wants to play. Maybe they get him out there a little bit, but I think the fact that he's dealing with, even if it's a minor injury, could throw a wrench into even what they were initially planning.
No question. And looking at the Saints team, I want to talk about some of maybe your 53-man roster predictions, and then what's going to happen from your experience, especially working with this team and covering this team. What's going to happen from this Chargers game, the time between Chargers and game 1 against the Falcons. So we're going to talk about that, but I also want to get to know you a little bit. So tell us, you know, I don't need the year you were born and what hospital, but, you know, take me back to when you first started covering this team and just your perspective of kind of what got you here and what's kept you here.
Yeah, no, well, this is year 18 covering the Saints now for me. So I grew up in Iowa. The hospital was in Iowa. Went to the University of Iowa, but no, my wife is from Houma, Louisiana, and so I've been here. I moved down here in 2003, covered LSU for a couple of years, and now 18 years on the Saints. My first year was the Hurricane Katrina season when they went 3-13. I lived in an apartment in San Antonio.
That'll keep you here.
But then the next year, Sean Payton, Drew Brees arrived, and so I've had a pretty good stretch of Saints history compared to a lot of stretches that came before. But and this is an interesting time. I mean, it's crazy that to say I've covered the team for 18 years, and this is only the second one where Sean Payton wasn't the head coach, and only the third one where Drew Brees wasn't the quarterback. It's more of a mystery. There were a lot of we know everything there is to know about this team years. This is not one of those.
From an ESPN writing and reporting perspective, how does kind of your angle in general of just covering the team change since you've been with it for the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era for so long? How does that just perspective change from your end with Jameis Winston, with Dennis Allen, with Pete Carmichael?
Yeah, I mean, a couple people are really fascinating on this team, and Jameis is one of them. I mean, obviously, wherever you rank him among the NFL quarterbacks, he's one of the most famous, and he's one of the most compelling. Because he still has the pedigree of a Heisman Trophy winner and number 1 overall draft pick. And even though we all talk about the 30 interception season, it was also a 5,000-yard passing season. And you can count in 2 hands the number of quarterbacks who've ever done that. He's still a fascinating guy. And it's crazy to think he's been in the league since 2015, and the book still isn't written on him. And so I think he's fascinating from both the local perspective, obviously, but even from the ESPN national perspective. And then obviously, Kamara and Thomas fall into that category. Tyrann Mathieu absolutely falls into that category. Dennis Allen, not so much, I think. But I was just talking about a podcast last night. Dennis Allen is really sort of an interesting, it's a copycat league. And if he has success, maybe teams do start to look at that. Well, who are some of the other coaches who had their first chance because they earned it because they were a young up and comer, didn't work out, but maybe second time head coaches is the way to go. Because guys like that don't get second chances very often.
And Louisiana has a lot of second time head coaches right now. Willie Green, second year with the Pelicans, Jay Johnson, LSU baseball, and Kim Mulkey and some of these new coaches at LSU, obviously Brian Kelly and Dennis Allen in their first years for their respective teams as head coaches. But I do want to ask you, you mentioned Jameis Winston, in 2015.
Yeah.
2013, he won the Heisman.
Yeah.
2014, Marcus Mariota won the Heisman. 2017, Baker Mayfield won the Heisman.
Yeah,
and then
you showed me the tweet that you put together.
The graphic.
NFC South.
Yeah, the NFC South quarterbacks have 3 Heisman trophies as starting quarterbacks, assuming that Mariota is going to get the starting job. And then you have a guy who has won 7 rings and was the 199th pick. Yeah, talk about the NFC South quarterbacks and maybe your prediction of how those 2 guys will start in their first years, being Mariota and Mayfield. And then what do you expect to see from the ageless wonder, Tom Brady?
Well, Brady's in his own category, obviously. But what's really interesting to me about the NFL quarterback picture right now is hot seat's not the right word, but there's about to be, everybody seems to think there's going to be 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round next year. I think there is already, more than I ever remember, more supply than demand. I mean, we're looking at Andy Dalton, who accepted a backup role with the Saints and competing for a starting job everywhere. Teddy Bridgewater accepted a backup role with Miami. Sam Darnold's not going to have a starting job. Gardner Minshew already. And then 6 new guys are coming in and being drafted in the first round, in theory, next year. That's a lot more guys who are going to be out of a job. So you don't get second and third chances probably in the new NFL. So 4 guys like Jameis and Mariota and Baker Mayfield, they better succeed in the jobs they have now, because it's not like, there's going to be 3 other openings next year. I don't think Jameis is on the hot seat. They made a 2-year commitment to him. They traded away their first round pick next year. So it's not like they're going to be the team that drafts a rookie to replace him next year. But it is just really interesting that I think there used to be quarterbacks will get second chances and third chances because everyone's so desperate to find a quarterback. Now it better work for Baker Mayfield in Carolina. It better work for Jameis Winston here, and certainly it better work for Mariota, although I think everybody kind of thinks he's keeping the seat warm for Desmond Ridder. But Tom Brady, I mean, he's one of one all time. He doesn't make any sense. All these other superstar quarterbacks just trying to get a second Super Bowl. Drew Brees could never get his second one. Aaron Rodgers wants his second one. Russell Wilson wants a second one. Tom Brady's like, no, I'm going to keep trying for number 8. It's just not fair.
I know. I had a couple of my friends tell me the other day, they were like, when we were talking fantasy football, we were doing our draft, and one of my buddies said, this is finally the year that Tom Brady it's over. And I can't agree. You can't say that because Max Kellerman said that on ESPN, and he's still eating his words when he said,
well, I'll tell
Tom
you
Brady
what,
is done,
It is funny, though, that revisionist history, like a lot of people will say, the Saints, if Drew Brees had retired a year earlier, the Saints
would have Tom
Brady,
Brady, maybe
could have had Tom Brady. I honestly think at that time, heading into that heading into 2020?
Yeah.
I think people would have rated Brees ahead of Brady at that moment because Brady was coming off a pretty down year.
No, you're right.
And going to Tampa really rejuvenated him. So I guess he needed that change of scenery. He knew he still had this last decade left in him, but
as much as Drew Brees
he started to look like he was declining a little bit, but he faked everyone out.
As much as Drew Brees has done for this city and for this team, bringing them a Super Bowl, I don't know if I would agree with the fact.
Well, heading into that year, the Brady,
statistically,
what Brady has done since has obviously been incredible. But Brady looked like it looked like
maybe a decline,
kind of on the decline, and he wasn't.
Yeah. So let's get into. You mentioned Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton taking the backup role. And then there's this other QB on the roster named Ian Book, who played under Brian Kelly, the now LSU coach. And then you have Taysom Hill as well. And Taysom Hill is listed as tight end. He's listed as Swiss Army knife. He's listed as football player in any real roster. You can play him at tight end in fantasy football this year, which is exciting. But point being, when it comes to roster cuts, and I know it's a difficult thing to talk about, we've heard some guys like Eric McCoy say it's his least favorite time of the year. Ian Book, if you had to make a prediction right now, what's
unfortunately, for him, I'm going to predict that he doesn't make the 53-man roster, but that he's obviously the practice squad candidate, and there's really no difference between being on the 53-man roster or the practice squad,
especially when you're talking about third string
purposes. But I think the reason a guy has to make the 53-man roster versus the practice squad is because, well, either he wants to play in the game, so if we're looking at, other guys, I'm sure you're going to ask me about Kirk Merritt, things like that. It's, do they have an actual role on the team? Will they be playing week 1 against the Falcons? But otherwise are you worried that another team would snatch him up? And it's just hard to think a team would do that with Ian Book because he hasn't quite shown out enough. And because everybody's got there aren't teams that that's what we need is a developmental quarterback on our 53-man roster that we, just arrives in September. It happens once in a while. It doesn't happen that often. So I don't expect him to make the 53-man. I think he'll go on the practice squad. But either way, the big decision the Saints have to make, and you mentioned Taysom Hill, is what if Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton gets hurt?
Yep.
Is Ian Book activated to be your backup on game day? Has he shown enough, and he'll have one more game, probably a little bit to play on Friday night.
Yep.
Has he shown enough that you would trust him to be the backup one snap away from getting into a game this season? Or would you make a call to a veteran like Trevor Siemian? Or would you say, Taysom, you're moving back to the quarterback room? That's going to be the real tough decision that hopefully the Saints never have to make. If as long as Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton are healthy, they never have to make that decision. But if one of those guys gets hurt, I don't know if Ian Book moves up to the number 2 spot. That'll be a fascinating decision if it ever comes to it.
No question. Kirk Merritt, you mentioned it.
Yeah,
I do want to ask about him, and remind me kind of are you more of a depth guy, or are you more focused on the 22 guys who are going to play consistently, maybe 23, 24 given packages? Because it seems
I project a 53-man roster, there's the 20, let's call it 30 guys who are going to play consistently. Some of the guys who aren't technically starters, we know Trevor Penning's going to be the if he's not starting, he's going to be the jumbo tight end. He'll be on the field a ton. We know that we know who the nickel and dime backs are. We know
think we're going to throw a pass to Trevor Penning on the goal line?
I don't know. I haven't seen him work on that in practice yet. I like the idea though. So let's call it 30 guys that we know are going to play. When you're not in that top 30, if you're not in the top 34, then what are you going to do for 15 snaps a game? So what?
Colin, radio Colin.
What receiver is the position to talk about this at? Because I think I had mentioned, and everybody was up in arms, that if everybody is healthy, I don't know if Marquez Callaway is active on game day because he's a pass catcher first and foremost. Now, if Michael Thomas missed a game, we would see Marquez Callaway go in there and replace him. But active on game day, I still have Traquan Smith penciled into my roster because he's the best blocking receiver on the team. Deontay Hardy, obviously, because he's returning kicks.
Yep.
And so that is why we have seen Kirk Merritt. They're like, this is the conversation the team is obviously having. It's like, all right, let's say we want a 7th receiver to make this team. How is he going to play 15 snaps in a game? And it's like, well, what if he's the 6th active receiver? And what if he's the 4th active running back? And what if he's the backup kick returner? And what if he plays 12 special team snaps? I think that's what they're considering with Kirk Merritt right now. But you don't just be like, well, we have 8 great pass catchers.
Yeah. If
they're going to be inactive on game day, then it's, it's like, what are they actually going to do in the game? Same conversation at linebacker. Darren Rizzi, the special teams coordinator, is probably going to choose the backup line as much as we've seen Nephi Sewell and
Eric Wilson,
Chase and all of them flash. John Bostic even. Yeah, I think Andrew Dowell is the most secure of all of them because he's going to play on every special team.
He blocked a punt last year, right? I think.
And he's been very good. He had another play in the first preseason game on special teams. So it's what are you getting? How are you getting on the field? That's how they make those decisions outside of the top 30, 35 guys.
Let's go to the 22 or 30 guys that are going to play and ask who has stood out to you in the 19 days of training camp from the starting perspective that have improved besides the big names like Jameis. And I mean, Kamara's honestly had a low-key fantastic game.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But, some guys who are starters, maybe it's a Marquez Callaway guy who obviously had a tough season last year with the pressure of being wide receiver 1. Who stands out to you on the offense and defense in those 30 guys?
The ones who have elevated the most from my expectations before camp even started to now is the cornerback position. I mean, I'm not the first to say Paulson Adebo is probably the MVP of camp. Yeah. And he's gotten plenty of publicity for that. But that is a huge development. I honestly might have predicted going into this summer that Bradley Roby might unseat him just based on pedigree. Like, it seemed like Paulson Adebo kind of overshot, last year and maybe would fall back down to earth. It's quite the opposite. He looks like a second-year guy who's ready to make a second-year leap after a really impressive rookie year. And then Bradley Roby has also really impressed me. And if he was the starter, I'd feel really good about where they're at. So having, and obviously Marshawn Lattimore, having those 3 corners and then C.J. Gardner-Johnson being the nickel, we do wonder if they're going to take a step back at safety because of the safeties they lost. But the secondary overall, I feel just as good about as probably ever because of that. That cornerback position is the one that has elevated the most in my mind. And then just a reminder, seeing their offensive line back together, like we've talked about the receivers ad nauseum, how depleted they were at the receiver position
and how stacked we are now.
And how stacked they are now. It's the same with the offensive line. That very quietly is what just destroyed this offense in the second half. They were a 5-2 team when they were relatively healthy, even without having any top-notch receivers last year. When they really stopped playing offense and just their offense completely shut down in the second half of the season, it was when those offensive line injuries piled up. So seeing the healthy offensive line back out there, I think is one of the more promising things. Even though we knew it, seeing it reminds you, this is one of the better offensive lines in the league.
ESPN's Mike Triplett joins us on Talk Culotta. He's been here since 2005, since that hurricane that started with a K that nobody wants to talk about, especially us being in August right now and what crisis mode the Saints and the entire city of New Orleans might have to go into soon. Knock on wood for sure on that end of things. But we're going to close with some rapid fire presented by Helm Paint and Decorating. And I think for these first 2 rapid fire questions, I'm going to ask you about 5 or 6.
Okay.
I think the first 2 are going to have the same answer.
All right. Let's see if you're right.
But let's see. First and foremost, who is the best and or funniest in press conferences for the Saints?
Best and or funniest. You know what? This is a tough question because they always get rid of our media award winners every year. Teron Armstead was a 2-time winner. Sheldon Rankins was a 2-time winner. I think the sneaky possibility for best could be Jarvis Landry.
Okay.
Yeah, he's shown hints of it. Now, funniest, I wonder if you're going Cam Jordan because he just talked today. But Cam Jordan's the entertainer. Like the secret sauce though. Who is the guy who delivers the goods and fills the notebooks? I think our leading contenders for that award that we give out every year are going to be Jarvis Landry, Cam Jordan. Mark Ingram's always good for that, and Tyrann Mathieu has the reputation of being that kind of guy. So I think we got a couple new good ones in that category this year.
The second question, which I did think it was going to be Cam Jordan, and I know it's got to be Cam Jordan for this next one. The question's presented by H2O Salon and Spa. Who's got the best hair on the Saints team?
All right, you say it's definitely Cam Jordan.
In my opinion. But you can go someone different.
It's the most entertaining because it's different every year.
Yeah.
Is there anybody?
Pick somebody different because Cam always gets
Marquez
the love.
Callaway, right?
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Kamara, Deontay
But
Hardy.
Callaway stands out even from the guys with the longer hair because, the colors and the texture to it. Like you
Doesn't
don't
he
have
have
to
a name
see
for the
anything else.
red,
Yeah. You don't have to
snake or
see
something like
You
that?
don't have to see anything else on the field. You don't have to see the jerseys to identify him.
Yeah.
But I do keep seeing Alex Anzalone, who would have been a former answer in this on Hard Knocks with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah. Shout out Lions and Hard Knocks. I haven't watched it yet. Have you?
I saw the first episode.
Yeah. Okay. To close out rapid fire, who is the team you're looking forward to facing the most or covering the most? And obviously the go-to for a lot of Louisiana natives is going to be week 6 against the Bengals.
The Bengals, obviously. Well, I mean, I most look forward to being in the Dome for that game, obviously. I mean, but week 2, here we go. You asked about Tom Brady to start that. I mean, let's find out if this narrative is going to continue. Do they still have partial ownership of that team? I mean, that's when we're really going to find out if this defense is just as good as it's been. So not to be like I don't look ahead down the schedule, but it's not going to get much better in week 2.
You've probably heard my phone vibrating this whole time, and that's because the Jameis Winston – I clipped up the Jameis Winston touchdown to ratio when he was talking baseball at the end of the press conference today. And, big concern on Saints fans' minds is the touchdown to interception ratio given his the year, which when I think was 30 for 30. Was it 30 touchdowns, 30
I think it was
picks?
Was it 33 and 30 or 32 and 30?
Right.
But yeah, for sure.
And he's
a lot
just
better last year.
And he's just right. And he's just so open to. I love how calm and collected he is when he gets those types of questions. He said, I think it was word for word, touchdown to interception ratio needs to be where it can be where it needs to be. Yeah. So that my winning ratio can be where it needs to be, so that ultimately this team can be where it needs to be.
And I believe that. I mean, we saw it in a small sample size last year. It was 6.5 games, but he showed that, and he showed that in games where the defense and the run game were playing so well that he never had to force it. And I think the great thing about him is if he has that element, but if they ever need some instant magic, he has that too. I mean, he has one play touchdown drives in his arm, and he certainly has the receivers to deliver them now. So the perfect combination is obviously if they're in position to win a game, 9-0 or 20-6 or whatever, he can play a move the chains offense. That's the goal. But if they're ever down and they need points, that might be his specialty. Like he's a guy who can get that ball down the field and to his playmakers. So.
Final thought with ESPN's Mike Triplett. We're in the first offensive possession against the Atlanta Falcons in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in Atlanta. What are you looking for?
My biggest – so since I just complimented Jameis, I'll say the biggest question mark to me is I think he's a really talented quarterback who probably hasn't had his best season yet. But I would not list – all right, who are the players you'd put around Mike? Put around him? Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Jarvis Landry. Those have not been the types of receivers that he's had the most success with. He doesn't like short and intermediate throws. He likes to look downfield first. I think he's going to love Chris Olave.
Are you going deep ball first down?
But no, what I'm saying is I want to see how they marry that.
Yeah.
How do they accentuate all of Jameis's strengths, but also the fact that they have some of the best short and intermediate pass catchers in the entire NFL around him. And, are we going to see a 15 play? Are we going to see 12 play touchdown drives from this team, 15 play touchdown drives from this team? Are we going to see, third down conversion rate and first down rate?
Right. How are we going to score?
Which we've always seen with this team. And if so, they're going to be really dangerous.
No question. And could Pete Carmichael throw us all curveball and on first down of the first possession against the Falcons, line up Taysom Hill at quarterback?
I do think we're going to see those plays. You mentioned Taysom Hill as a tight end in fantasy. That's I think people think moving him to tight end means he isn't playing quarterback anymore.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they were getting rid of that read option package where he's always averaged 5.5 yards a carry. It's going to be a big part of this offense. So first drive, hey, Taysom Hill, how about this? What are the odds on Taysom Hill scoring the first touchdown of the Saints season?
That would be a great bet.
If those are high odds, I'd like to get them. But I will say on the opposite end, I think after the first touchdown drive of the season, we're going to feel really good about Alvin Kamara, and we're going to feel really good about the offensive line. I have a feeling that's how they're going to. I mean, look what they did when they came out in Week 1 last year against Green Bay. That's how they want to win games. So that's what they're going to try first.
A lot more that we can talk about. We're going to wrap it up for today. Saints play the Chargers on Friday in the Caesars Superdome. Just talk a lot of where we talk a lot of sports. He's ESPN's Mike Triplett. I'm Jack Culotta, and we are signing out. Thanks for
having me, man.
Yep.